So much for joining us. Tonight, we zoom in on the arms trade, the business of arms, the business of war. It is a shadow world, is it not now, Nana?
Tans, you're bringing out the big guns now, are you not?
Well, indeed I am. Regardless of a number of measures to ensure that legally traded arms and weapons do not end up in the hands of criminals and warlords, they do end up being used in some parts of the world for the suppression of human rights. And they are associated with extrajudicial killings as well as other forms of fundamental human right violations. This is what gives the arms trade and the companies that operate in it a bad name and creates inherent risks to the entire industry. It is a dangerous trade. It is often a secretive one too. Those who research the trade have pointed out that arms deals are replete with allegations of corruption and often accompanied by allegations of the killings of those who stand in the way of such transactions. With near global functions and huge complicated international supply chains, the activities of the defense industry touch a wide variety of sectors and actors working in different regulatory frameworks across the globe. But activists all over the world, including in South Africa, have been pushing back over the past decade and calling for greater transparency.
Is it not a highly competitive market in which technology is consistently evolving and the very nature of wars changing?
Well, the landscape of defense procurement and business is in constant transformation, and innovation is the name of the game. Emerging markets are fast becoming sites of arms production. This then creates a problem, as national budgets are often skewed away from development priorities in favor of procurement, and funds are diverted away from national priorities like socioeconomic priorities towards exorbitant, expensive defense spending, and many countries simply cannot afford this. Now, leaders and public officials are often leaned on and bent towards procuring the guns and the arms, whether their nations can afford this or not, and whether their nations need these or not.
Thandeka, I understand that you and the team put together the story of the prosecution history of Thales across the world.
Indeed, we did. The Thales Group stands accused in the Pietermaritzburg High Court alongside Jacob Zuma, our former president. Thales has a South African unit called Thales South Africa. It all began when we, the people of South Africa, through our government, awarded a 2.6 billion rand contract to provide the combat management system, air and surface research radar, and hull sonar of the Valor-class frigates of the South African Navy. Now, the press and certain parliamentarians and activists began to sound alarm bells, alleging widespread bribery. It is then that the allegations began to be looked into. Now, documents before the court say that Thales then sought to buy a cover-up by bribing our former president, Jacob Zuma. The court is yet to announce its findings, but we will be discussing this later when our guests join us. The first Thales was known as Thomson CSF. The company changed its branding in 2000 and became the Thales Group. It has satellite offices across the globe and has about 64,000 people in 56 different countries. It turns over about 15 billion euro a year. It has aerospace, space ground, transportation, defense and security divisions, and is partially owned by the French government. It has a long history of corruption allegations. In 2015, Denel was recovering after a slump that started in 2010, according to evidence led at the State Capture Commission. In 2015, BAE Systems completed a sale of its 75% holding in its South African land systems business to the South African state-owned weapons company Denel. Many have argued that Denel was in no financial position to make the acquisition, and that combined with the BAE transaction and the Gupta-linked VR laser deal brought the parastatal to its knees. BAE sold its stake in the business and sealed a 641 million rand deal in 2015. Denel forked out 855 million rand for BAE Land Systems South Africa and paid out its BEE partners. Soon thereafter, a liquidity crisis ensued and Denel had going concern problems. The PIC then bought up almost 90% of cash-strapped arms manufacturer Denel's bonds. The purchase of Denel debt by the PIC amounted to, some said, a bailout by stealth. The PIC ended up owning 2.8 billion rand of Denel bonds out of the company's total issuance of 3.15 billion rand.
Here, hold that serious. Deserves a glass of not so serious. Come fill yours with Russian Bear triple distilled vodka. Get a 750ml bottle for just $114.99. Only from Tops at Spar. Not for persons under the age of 18.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
Welcome back, and now we speak to Darren Olivier, who is a director of African Defence Review. Now he joins me on Skype. Good evening, Darren, how are you?
Good evening, I'm fine, thanks, how are you?
Now, should we be concerned about the conduct of arms companies, and should we not raise ethical issues, or should we turn a blind eye?
We should absolutely be concerned. The same with any big industry that deals with government-to-government deals or these major procurement. This is the reason why you have really good, I think.
Darren? Unfortunately, we have lost that line, and we will try and connect you to it in a little while. And now I am joined on the line by Jane's correspondent and defense expert, Helmut Heyman. Hello, Helmut, how are you?
Hi, good evening. I'm well, thanks. Yourself?
Thank you for joining us. We chatted earlier in the day, and you are of a different opinion. You're of the opinion that the industry could well die if the country and the people of this country do not recapitalize the industry on an urgent basis.
I think it's partly a case of recapitalizing, And it's also a case of giving the Defence Force money to actually buy the equipment it needs. You know, just giving the companies, and particularly Denel, just giving them cash isn't going to get anybody anywhere. They'll just repaint the offices and maybe buy a new BMW. But if you give them orders, then they have something they can manufacture, it keeps the engineers busy, and then they also have new equipment that they can enter the export market with, which at the moment is getting difficult. They're still trying to sell mainly 1980s, early 1990s technology.
You're saying that we should recapitalize Denel and make sure that we have got production capacity in the arms industry in this country so that this can boost our export and so that we can preserve jobs. But should we not worry about the ethics and the nature of the industry as it's currently modeled?
Look, you have to. Certainly any export of defense equipment is an act of foreign policy. If you're selling some defense equipment to a government in another country, then you're tacitly saying that as a general principle, you're happy with that country, what it's doing. And bearing in mind, you're also saying that you're likely to remain happy with that country for the next 20, 30 years, that equipment has to be supported. And that, of course, works both ways. If you're buying from someone, you need to be happy with them too. But the thing is, it goes beyond exports. The industry is there. It gives South Africa a measure of strategic independence. We're not dependent on other people to equip our defence force. It's a case of import replacement. Otherwise, lots of money and lots of jobs flow out equipping the defence force. And then, of course, as you touched on already, there's the issue of employment. There's the issue of new technologies and processes that get established here through the defence industry and spun off into other sectors. So there's quite a lot to it. But yes, ethics is part of it. You don't want to sell equipment to somebody who's going to immediately pack up his bags and attack his neighbor for no good reason.
And what about the socio-economic impact of the industry itself? Do you not think that the industry must be held more accountable for the way it impacts society and the way in which it affects livelihoods and causes a number of deaths?
Look, I know the defense industry generally, I think, causes fewer deaths than say, mining, for instance, pro rata, and probably a couple of other sectors as well. It's an industry where you do, in some sectors of the industry, those that deal with munitions, explosives, propellants and so on, you do need to be careful. To a lesser extent, the aviation side, but there's really only test pilots that are involved. The rest of the industry really doesn't hold much risk to people working in it or people working around it or living near it. It's pretty much like any other manufacturing industry, maybe less of a problem than some. The real ethical issue doesn't lie so much internally as with foreign policy.
But these are weapons for war. These are weapons for violence. And can you tell me what percentage of production that we do here in South Africa is used in combat situations, and what percentage is used in civilian situations?
Well, most of the stuff that is exported, or for that matter manufactured here by the defense industry, is for the armed forces. At the moment, exports are probably close to 60%. But most of them go to countries that aren't at war. They just want to be able to defend themselves if something does go wrong. And the exception at the moment are UAE and Saudi Arabia that are involved in their fighting in Yemen. But most of the other customers of the industry are not. They are just keeping their defense forces capable, so if things do go wrong, they can defend themselves.
Are our guns involved in conflicts like Syria and Yemen?
Look, I think some equipment is probably involved in Yemen, because both Saudi and the UAE have bought South African equipment in the past. I doubt it in Syria unless some stuff is leaked from somebody else, because I'm not aware of any major sales or recent sales of equipment to Syria. The previous government didn't much like Syria and vice versa. And since the present government has come in since 1994, I'm not aware of any major sales. There was, I think, some hiccup with people trying to get stuff to Syria, but I don't think anything really got through. But some stuff may have been shifted across by another country that's bought it, although I doubt it, because most of the industry's clients are not great friends of Syria either.
What is it about the business model of this industry that lends itself to so many commissions and illicit payment of public officials?
Heck, to be honest, I don't think it's actually much more prone to corruption than anything else that deals with those sums of money. There are two issues involved. There are very large amounts of money involved. Whenever there's a large amount of money involved, somebody somewhere has stolen something. It doesn't matter whether you're buying defense equipment or locomotives or airliners or soccer stadiums or toll roads. It doesn't matter which country you're in. But the other thing that is a factor is that in most defense deals there's an element of secrecy or security. you don't necessarily, if you're buying equipment, you don't necessarily want other countries, maybe hostile countries, to know exactly how much you're buying, exactly which version of it. Now, the minute you have a measure of secrecy and security, on the one hand, it does create a little bit of opportunity for someone who wants to dip his fingers in the cookie jar. And on the other hand, it creates the opportunity for people who want to accuse the industry of being corrupt, of saying it is, because there is a secrecy around it. It makes it look as if it's nasty and crooked. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's much more crooked than any other industry that involves large sums of money.
Many people would disagree with you rather strongly. For example, they would point to the fact that in Malaysia, the arms deal there led to the prosecution of the Prime Minister and the death of a Mongolian model who was a translator during that. Let's go then to Taiwan, where the head of procurement was found bobbing up in a bath of water after he had opposed and stood in the way of the deal. And someone close to the deal was later successfully prosecuted for the murder. And let's go to Cambodia, where the World Bank, in a motorcycle transaction deal, had to actually ban Thales or their employees from actually involving themselves with Thales. We can go to Brazil and many other jurisdictions where massive amounts of bribery were alleged. And we don't even need to go to the large deal, the Al-Mama deal in Saudi Arabia that involved BAE. What would you say to all this?
Okay, well, specifically the Al-Yamama, I'm not that sure actually involved as much corruption as people think. The way it was structured was the Saudi would pay in oil. If the oil price went down, they had to pump more oil. If the oil price went up, the British had to pay money into the Saudi government account in Washington. That's where the bulk of that money went. Sure, some stuck to fingers on the way. Other countries I don't have enough detail to comment on, but I'd say let's just look at home. We had lots of allegations of corruption around the arms deal. But if you actually look at it, we paid market price or less for everything. So while I'm sure somebody stole something somewhere, there wasn't room for much. On the other hand, if you look at Eskom, if you look at coal mines, if you look at locomotives in South Africa, and I don't think other countries are any different. And if you look at those big deals, you'll always find somebody somewhere stealing something. It's just the arms industry tends to get more attention, partly because of secrecy, partly because in peacetime people don't want to spend on defense equipment. They don't see why they should. So they're negative about it to start with. And partly because a lot of people, particularly in the journalism business, and I'm partly in that business, are almost inherently negative towards the military and therefore also the defense industry. So they like to look for problems there rather than look at, be it locomotives or soccer stadiums.
Helmut, would you also believe that the international judiciary and the international commercial courts, which handed out the largest fine in history to the French and to Thales, would you say that they're also ill-disposed towards the defense industry?
No, I think they probably had a case there. The guys were crooked, and they got zapped. It's just, have they also done the same with other things? I don't know. I can just say, looking at specifically in South Africa, if I look at the crookery that's gone on in other sectors of government, they make even the worst allegations on the arms deal pale into insignificance.
Now, what would you say is the positive way forward for this country when it comes to defense spending? What is your recommendation?
Well, I think the first step is government's got to decide what role it wants South Africa to play. Do we just want to protect ourselves in our borders? Do we want to protect our vital interests outside the country? For instance, the Mozambique Channel, to which most of our oil comes, which is vulnerable to piracy and in the future maritime terrorism, or the Kahora Bassa power station, its power lines. Or do we want to play a regional peacekeeping role or continental peacekeeping role? And that government's got to decide. That's an issue of foreign policy and national security policy. Once that decision is taken, then from that, we can decide what size defense force we need and whether it's worth having a defense industry to support it. There's quite a dramatic difference between, say, just saying, okay, we'll just defend ourselves and deal with crises at home, or we're going to play a regional security role.
Last question, Helmut.
It requires about double the budget.
Last question, Helmut. What do you think? Do you think a new deal is in the offing?
A new deal in what respect?
A new arms deal could potentially be on the horizon.
No. At the moment, the Defence Force is so underfunded it can't even maintain its equipment. I don't see it getting money to buy any major items. There are major gaps. It has no transport aircraft. It has no maritime patrol aircraft that it badly needs. But I don't see any money being made available for any of those anytime soon.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
And now we get back to Darren Oliver, who is a director of African Defence Review, and now he joins us again on Skype. Darren, sorry we lost you there. Welcome back.
Thank you, no problem.
I wonder if you followed the discussion that I had with Helmut, but what is your view on the ethics and the social impact of the defence industry?
So I did follow, and broadly I do agree with Helmut. My approach is that the same way you deal with corruption here is you deal with any of the big projects. Have transparency, really good processes around procurement, and the ability for example, Parliament to have really good oversight.
So you're saying basically that if we tidy up procurement and we tidy up and we have vigorous oversight, then we can be halfway to getting this right for our people and the nation.
Absolutely. As things stand, actually, the Defence Force has a pretty good policy in place called DAP 1000. It's much improved since the arms deal area and before.
Can you describe the characteristics of this program?
Well, for example, there's a whole process to be followed in terms of which authorities must give permission for different steps. There's very strong control over financials. The accounting of it is how to describe it. It's so, for example, if you have any deal over 10 million rand, then the requirement is that the Minister of Defence must approve this, and you have reports going to Parliament as well in terms of what's being acquired, when and why, and you also have reports going to the Auditor General to overview these procurement. However, yeah, sorry.
Previously, there have been some slippages in terms of Parliament doing its oversight role when it comes to the defence industry. That was witnessed during the arms deal. And how can South Africa tidy up on that score?
Well, certainly. So this is a matter of parliamentary oversight and where it lacks. There's a report that came out recently on areas that can be improved. For one, we need to have much better pressure, I think, from the parliamentary committee to force the DOD to provide these reports and to provide the level of detail that they need to provide effective oversight. This is really a question Parliament sees its own as opposed to an issue of the arms industry.
This is truly important because this is public money and oversight is very important. That's where we'll have to leave it for tonight. And it really reminds me of Henry Ford's saying that show me who makes a profit from war and I will show you how to stop the war. Now, good night and so long.